we live in a world where things are changing at a very, very fast pace. And in that case, what happens that whatever product roadmap you kind of building today for next 5 years, that could change because some technology, technology can come and that could change the way you're thinking about your product roadmap. And one good example is generative AI.
Can you please explain what are the some of the key components of a successful go-to-market strategy?
GTM is a very collaborative effort, and it would not be successful unless you have a great partnership with your stakeholders. Outside of that, I think one of the other very important pieces would be deep customer understanding, because at the end of the day, through go to market, the idea is to reach the customers that your solution or product would work best for. One of the most common mistakes is to get more focused on internal stakeholders and not spend or not have deep understanding of external stakeholders.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Lyoshin podcast. Today's guest is Gunjan Paliwal. She's a senior product development and marketing manager at Meta. And today I invited Gunjan to talk about product roadmaps and go-to-market strategies. Welcome, Gunjan. Nice to have you here.
Thanks, Wade. Thanks for the warm intro. Hi, everyone. I'm Gunjan Paliwal. I'm Senior Product Development and Marketing Manager. I have been in this space for over a decade now, and I've had the opportunity to learn and go through the whole cycle of product GDMs and product launches. And in this last decade, I've had the opportunities to work with some leading companies like Microsoft, Sears, Newell, Meta. And I've also had the opportunities to lead many complex and successful GTMs as well as product launches. Overall, I really enjoyed this experience, and I look forward to sharing some insights and learning from my experiences in podcast today. Currently, I'm working as I said, that senior product development and marketing manager with Meta within its teams, and we are developing cutting edge digital solutions for digital advertising.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for introduction and welcome. And I'd like to start our conversation with roadmaps. What are your criteria for adding things to the roadmap?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So when we're talking about like adding things to roadmap, one thing I try to keep in mind is how do we kind of prioritize the right things. And it gets tricky because there are always so many ideas, so many things that you can build, but at the same time, you have to do a good job of prioritization and identify what would be the most impactful things that you would work on. So as a thumb rule, I kind of try to use this 2x2 metric. On one hand, we've got impact, and on the other hand, we have feasibility, which is like accumulation of technical feasibility, dependencies, resource availability, and kind of high-low on both spectrum, and then kind of map all the product features that we are talking about in those quadrant. The quadrant that I prioritize most is most impactful and most feasible, and then of course the least priority is given to the quadrant where we have low impact and low feasibility. Having said that, there are internal and external factors that I kind of consider that kind of go into this decision making. So for internal factors, we are looking at whether this is a good strategic fit, whether we have resource availabilities, what are our dependencies, how urgent it is, and how technical feasibilities. And from external factor side, like I would be looking at what is the customer impact. I think that's the most important thing, like how it's going to help customers. What is the pain point that we are solving? What is the intensity of that pain point? What's the urgent need? And then I'll also look at things like market demand, how big is this opportunity size, revenue potential would kind of tie back here as well. And lastly, I'll also look at the competitive landscape, that what are the solutions that already kind of exist, and then like how we are offering something better than what already exists. So overall, which factors would be considered more or less, I think that will depend on many other things like product type and where we are. But having said that, I think that would be a good starting point for me.
Yeah, that's great. And then on top of the strategic work that people usually do and add to the roadmaps, there's also maintenance, right? You need to keep up your systems, keep the lights on and things like that. How do you balance between these two types of work, if you will, on the roadmaps?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, as I said, that one of the biggest challenges in product roles, whether it's GTM or whether it's product development, is how do you prioritize? Prioritization is the key to be successful in these roles, and I think. Uh, when I'm talking about prioritization, it's not just about strategic work, but it's also about like maintenance work, because both are equally important and you need to find a very good balance to have a healthy product. Strategic work kind of sets up the tone for the long term product health, but at the same time, if you do not have good maintenance work going, you would end up disappointing your existing users, and you would end up creating bad user experience. So for any product to be successful, I think the key is to find a good balance between these two. And then a thumb rule that I try to follow is that if we are launching a new product and feature, we also should look at what is existing and how can we fix it, or improve something that already is there and kind of critical for existing product experience. Overall, the approach I typically take is think about setting aside some resource, both for maintenance work as well as strategic work, and kind of do a good allocation to both. And then tackle the big stuff, like things that could impact user experience in short term. I think those are things that need to be prioritized and that kind of fall under maintenance work. And the other thing is also like bundling the small stuff. So rather than tackling them as small tasks, kind of bundle all the maintenance work together and kind of look at it like one big project, which can then be kind of prioritized and get resources for. I think the other things to look at is communicating, because what happens that when you're kind of working on this area where you have strategic priorities as well as maintenance, a lot of times people get more um, you know um, more inclined towards taking up more strategic stuff than just like ongoing daily stuff. But having said that, if you're leading those projects, the onus is on you to kind of convey the criticality of both kinds of work, and despite of the fact we need to think strategic and do all long-term planning, we still need to kind of continue focusing on maintenance work as a team. So I think communication would also be the key here to stay aligned with the larger team, so they are kind of prioritizing both kinds of work properly. And lastly, I would say that plan for long haul for both kind, like have a long-term planning even for maintenance work, because despite of however much strategic work you're doing, eventually you'll have to continue focusing on maintenance work and have a plan around that as well. And lastly, as a project leader or a product leader, you should keep an eye on finding the balance. You have to ensure that there's a good balance between both.
Yeah, that's a key, I guess. Again, going back to prioritization, what you just said in the beginning, sometimes things get things needs to get updated, and you can't move forward until it's done, and you have to schedule it and get it done. So,
True.
yeah. Yeah, and then some of the challenges, like from your experience, what are top of your mind when managing the roadmaps?
Yeah. When you're talking about maintaining a long-term product roadmap, you are talking about like taking a longer horizon, but that comes up with its own challenge, because some of the key challenges I foresee is changing customer needs. So customer needs are not static; they are evolving, they are dynamic. So what customers need today could change in future. So one is like keeping your long-term roadmap aligned with changing customer needs. I think that's very important, because at the end of the day, your product is all about product market fit, where you kind of creating a product that meets customers needs and there's a strong demand for it, and it cannot be achieved unless we have a good sense of what customers need or what users need. So I think that's a big challenge. How do you kind of always stay updated with that. The second I would say is also technological shift. We live in a world where things are changing at a very, very fast pace. And in that case, what happens that whatever product roadmap you kind of building today for next 5 years, that could change because some technology uh, technology can come and that could change the way you're thinking about your product roadmap. And one good example is generative AI. I'm sure that generative AI is going to, influence many product roadmaps and would definitely make some of the changes in the long-term product roadmap or strategy that currently that were planned maybe 1 year back or 2 year back. So I would say technology shift is another one. The other thing I would say resource changes, like you might have uh, ch- uh, change in team size and depend, or it could be higher or lower, and depending on that your product roadmap could look different. And lastly, I would also say that balancing short-term demands, because there is always quick wins or like firefighting that you need to kind of tackle, and that could sometimes take away the focus and resources from long-term product roadmap. But as I said, that the key is finding the balance, whether it's long-term product roadmap versus short-term, or whether it's maintenance versus strategic work. And I think as a someone who's leading this project, you'll have to ensure that all stakeholders are aligned and they are updated about any changes in this long-term product roadmap, or like any challenges that you might foresee.
Yeah, yeah. And then also we get all this feedback and input from various stakeholders, from users, from the team itself. So how do you, first of all, how do you gather all of that, and how then you put it to the roadmap?
Yeah, I feel that as someone who is leading product development or product GTM, you would have to be eyes and ears. You would have to be always gathering feedback, understanding, the pulse of stakeholders. And primarily, I think I would look at stakeholders for product development and product GDM in two parts. One is internal stakeholders, and then we have external. So for internal stakeholders, all the team that are kind of helping you build out the product. It could be engineering, UX, data science, UX, or product. And at the same time, if you're talking about external stakeholders, you've got users, customers. Customer users are typically same, but in B2B cases, they could be different. Then you've got partners and so on and so forth. So when you're thinking about gathering inputs from these stakeholders, you need to think about like what are some of the best ways to collaborate. I feel that for internal stakeholders, cross-functional collaboration is very, very important. And for that, you need to kind of create the forums. So cross-functional pods could be one good way to stay collaborative, where you're inviting folks from different functions and giving them opportunities to kind of stay aligned, maintaining transparent communication, and also more regular updates. So everyone has an idea about how the product or GTM is kind of shaping up. So outside of cross-functional collaboration, I think you would also have to do executive alignment. For that, you need like periodic reviews, any big updates or any big pieces that you need to align on. So I think that would be another big piece for internal stakeholders. Third, I would also say idea management, where you're giving folks opportunities to kind of share new ideas. So having those kind of forums, it could be, like Slack or Workchat or whatever, try to create some medium where folks can share opinions, feedbacks more openly and more regularly, so they can collaborate better with you and they have an opportunity to provide feedback faster and better. Because if there are no forums or if there are no medium kind of setup for folks to reach out, it will be much harder for you to get the feedback in timely manner. And I feel someone who is kind of working on product development and GDM, that person's success kind of depends on how good feedback that person can gather, and with like what velocity and what frequency. So for external stakeholders, I think for inputs, we could look at typical user research kind of kind of solutions like interview surveys. But you could even go a step further. You could have customer advisory board where you could invite your top customers. And top doesn't have to be in terms of revenue. It could be in terms of engagement. And you could define top for yourself. So having that customer advisory board, I mean, it could be early adopters if you're looking at that S curve. So folks who are like highly engaged and can provide you good insights about what's working for your product, what's not, or in general, like around messaging positioning. And lastly, I would say outside of this primary research with external stakeholders, you could always do secondary research like doing marketing, doing analysis using market research or understanding about competitors and just entire ecosystem. So I think those would be some of the ways where I would spend time to gather inputs from external and internal stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, typically as a product manager, it's coming to you from all over the place, staying organized. I think it's one of those skills that would be great to have. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit to go-to-market strategy. And can you please explain what are the some of the key components of a successful go-to-market strategy?
Yeah. So again, I mean, I think for a go-to-market strategy to be successful, you need excellent cross-functional collaboration. GTM is a very collaborative effort, and it would not be successful unless you have a great partnership with your stakeholders. And you need you need very good alignment before you kind of go to market and kind of come up with the whole strategy and everything else. So I think for go-to-market strategy, first and foremost, I would focus on cross-functional collaboration and ensuring all teams that are part of GTM are well aligned. Outside of that, I think one of the other very important pieces would be deep customer understanding, because at the end of the day, through go-to-market, the idea is to reach your ideal customer or the customers that your solution or product would work best for. And unless you have very good understanding or deep understanding of your customer, your GDM is not going to land well. So I think the second big piece would be like just having a customer understanding. And these are the kind of pieces that you would have to work on before the actual launch happens. So I would kind of look at GDM in three phases: pre-GDM, GDM, and then kind of post-GDM. So if you talk about cross-functional collaboration, understanding of customer, you need to have these pieces well done before the actual GDM takes place. And for actual GDM, of course, you would need like a very good understanding of target audience, because for that you will create like a value prop, positioning, messaging. So having those pieces kind of nailed out. And then, of course, you need to have pricing strategy, promotional strategy, channel strategy. And then lastly, I would say sales enablement. Again, when you talk about pricing strategy, promotional strategy, channel strategy, or sales enablement, that would look different for B2B versus B2C, or depending on product stage and all of those things. But typically, these are the kind of components of a GTM, which is like having a target audience, positioning, messaging, value prop, pricing strategy, channel strategy, promotional strategy, sales enablement, and then kind of customer success and support. So once you have kind of launched the product or once you have launched the features, customers have the support they need for post GDM. And then I would also call it like more like an iterative process. So once you have kind of launched the product or feature, your job is not done. You would always have to be kind of stay tuned. What's coming out of that GDM, how it's being perceived, how customers are responding to it. So you should also have like a good post GDM plan where you can align on with other stakeholders, what's kind of working, what's not working, and then kind of take those learnings to make adjustments as needed. So make it more like a dynamic and iterative process.
Yeah, that's great. I find many times people don't do this last piece. They release something and they forget about it, which is, I think, a big mistake. So going to the beginning of this process, what are some of the activities or how to conduct the market research, basically? before launching the product, right?
Yeah. I think before we get into that, how to, I think the other piece would be very important is why to. So why create, why conduct market research? I think the biggest piece that market research kind of help with finding product market fit and finding product market fit is the holy grail of product development. You should not be developing or working on features or products that do not have good product market fit. And a good product market fit is when product has strong demands and then users it's kind of solving for some real problems and it's kind of resonating well with your users, which leads to a strong demand and hence sustained growth. So if you look around some of the most successful products, they all have found a good product market fit. They are solving for some real problems, whether it's Amazon or whether it's uh, Netflix. So I think that's like kind of why. And then if we get into like how do we do market research, I think the focus should be on why we are doing market research, and that kind of define the how. So why we are doing market research is kind of like understanding whether we are solving a real problem. Is our solution significantly better than others? Are customers willing to pay for it, and all of those things. So basically trying to identify the unmet needs. So since that's what we are looking for through our market research, in terms of how I think I would be spending time with customers, it would be in terms of like surveys, interviews, customer advisory boards. The more time you can spend with customers, understanding their unmet needs and how your product or feature is going to solve some real problem, the better market research you would get. So those would be some of the ways. And outside of that, I think the second would be like just secondary research, and using industry reports and insights just to kind of understand the overall ecosystem, learning about what already exists in the market, why it's not solving the problem well, whether it's a new opportunity or whether it's something that's already kind of being done, but not being kind of solved well. So I think those would be some of the ways I'll kind of approach market research. First, like why, and then how.
Yeah. So it comes down to really the true discovery portion of the product management job, right?
Yeah.
Where you're doing all these activities with customers, figuring out how they do this today, what their problems are, what they wish they had, and things like that. That makes sense. And then part of this also is to find out the target audience, and maybe for some products you even need to like segment it. How do you identify and segment your audience?
Yeah. So I think so. We talked about market research. That kind of is a good segue to this question. So if you've done your market research well, if you understand who you're building that product for, I think it'll be much more organic and much easier for you to kind of identify your ideal customer profile. So ideally, you should have a very good understanding of who you're solving this problem for, who is your ideal customer, and who this product or feature would resonate best with. And once you have kind of developed that, from there you'll kind of build detailed personas. And I mean, these are not going to be real people. These are more hypothetical personas where you kind of identifying for so and so this problem or this product would kind of solve the best would solve this problem best for. So overall, the idea is to kind of start with ideal customer profile and then get into developing personas. And for developing personas, you would kind of want to have both quantitative and qualitative data. You could look at geographical data, you could look at demographic data, but I think that's kind of limiting. If you're just looking at demographic and geographical data, you should also be looking at psychographic and behavioral, more like lifestyle and other interests and hobbies that are kind of that would create better and more nuanced segment, versus if you're just focusing on geographical and demographic, which could be like more surface level. So when you're thinking about these segments, you should kind of look look at the whole spectrum and kind of look at more nuances to come up with build these customer personas. And then again, I would say that you would also be getting data, like if you're depending on where, if your product is already in the market, then you could kind of start getting that data, and you could also talk to customers to kind of test out your ideal customer profile and personas, whether the ideal customer profile you have kind of put together, or personas, as I said, that these are more hypothetical versus actual. But when you talk to actual customer, you could kind of map whether those are kind of mapping well, or your understanding is kind of off from how customers are responding to these products. So I would say that leverage qualitative and quantitative data, build these profiles, but also kind of test it out by talking to customer, or doing MVP, or kind of doing small beta, just to see whether your understanding of segments and target audience is good or not. And like everything else in like most of the things in product, I would say it's an iterative process. It's not like one and done. Your customer personas could evolve, your ideal customer profile could evolve. So it's not something one and done. You should go back time and again and kind of check whether whether these things are still the same, or you need to kind of evolve them as the product kind of goes through the whole growth cycle.
Yeah, understand. And then also, as part of this whole strategy and process, we need to define the positioning and messaging of the product. What could be some of the effective ways to develop that?
Yeah. So I think one of the most important thing that you need to develop the right positioning, messaging, value prop is to coming up with the right customer personas or ideal customer profile. And that kind of gives you a starting point to kind of start developing who you are, trying to reach out to through this messaging and positioning. So if you do not have very good understanding of your customer, then the messaging and positioning is not going to resonate well. So for messaging and positioning to resonate well, you need to kind of have a very good understanding of who your customer is, who you're solving problem for, and I mean, what's your unique value prop? Because you would want to stand out. If there are other solutions in that space, you wouldn't want to just talk about something. You would want to talk about how you are solving solutions differently from the others. So I think that unique value prop is also something that you need to work on outside of messaging and positioning. And these all should be something that resonates well with the customers, because at the end of the day, unless they kind of understand what problem or what this solution or product is doing for me, for them to kind of adopt to the product would be much harder. So I think those are some of the things you should keep in mind. And then of course, how you again, what else, the whole thing is going to be iterative, and just like everything else, it's not kind of one and done. You kind of you should also be gathering customer feedbacks, and just not necessarily on product features alone, but you could also take inputs on messaging and positioning, and even unique value prop, whether that's something resonating well with customers or not. And that kind of also can give you an insight, how do you need to evolve. So again, I would say that having very good understanding of customers, and then keep gathering their insights and keep connecting with them, will kind of help you come up with the right messaging and positioning.
I see. And then it also requires to do some competitive analysis. And while doing that, what are people trying to learn about and or inform from that research for their go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, so competitive analysis, I would say, is an important piece to GTM, just kind of trying to understand that what are the white space opportunities, what are the solutions that already exist. And as I said, that unique value prop is kind of very important for messaging and positioning. You can have more clarity on when you have kind of understood the, competitive landscape rather than competitor. I would say, like, just generally trying to understand indirect, like, because the competition doesn't have to be direct, it could also be indirect, because it's not necessarily players in the same space. It could also be like, what are the some other ways users kind of engage with similar products. So I think it's important to not just kind of get focused on direct competition, but also thinking about indirect competition. So overall, I think those insights are very, very important for kind of coming up with GTM strategy, because it kind of helps you identify white space opportunities, as well as help you kind of come up with your messaging, positioning, and unique value prop. I would also say that typically, you should do SWOT analysis, which kind of gives you a good idea what are your strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. And then depending on where you are, you would kind of want to position yourself for the product launches or product development. So I think SWOT analysis is another good tool to kind of understanding yourself vis-a-vis the ecosystem. And then lastly, I would say that overall, by doing competitive analysis, the idea shouldn't be that you are kind of obsessed with customer. It's more like just understanding, what all is out there and how it's currently serving the customer, what are unmet needs, what are some of the opportunities, or what are some of the white spaces where you can solve these needs or wants better. So when I'm thinking about competitive analysis, I'm not recommending getting obsessed with customer, but more like having an understanding of that ecosystem where you would operate, and being able to communicate to your customers how you are uniquely solving some of those problems.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a I think it's important part to understand what others are doing and offering, or like you said, indirectly, which is also, I think there was a interesting, I don't remember, it's an article or some book that I read. They were saying, they were explaining something about Coca-Cola company, and how the CEO at the time said, like, guys, understand, we don't compete with like Pepsi Cola, we compete with water companies. People drink water and we want everybody to drink Coke. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. But yeah, that's indirect competitor, right? So then once we have the product figured out, we ready to go to the market, we need to do some advertisement and promotions. What are some tactics for promoting the product?
Yeah, so for promotional strategy, I think it'll depend on a lot of things. What is the life cycle, of your product? Whether you are in growth phase, early, or mature, or declining. I think that kind of decides your promotional strategy as well. And then you'd have to think about target audience, industry, available resources. A lot of this promotion could look very different for B2B versus B2C, because if you talk about B2C, you're like, you have to the audience that you need to reach out is much larger compared to B2B, where you could be more precise and can provide even more one-on-one kind of promotional or sales approach. So overall, I would say that typical tactics would include content marketing, social media campaign, email marketing, influencer partnership, SEO, but PR efforts, testimonials, etc. But again, like, what precisely would go into that promotional strategy or marketing strategy, that would be dependent on B2B or B2C. And also, like, there's also new way of kind of growing the product that's kind of coming up, and it's been extremely successful in SaaS, which is like product-led growth, or where the focus is kind of letting users experience the product itself, so they can kind of decide whether they want to become paid customer, or whether they want to kind of continue using it, versus like the traditional model where you kind of lead with sales and marketing teams. So there's also this new focus on product-led growth, and a lot of B2B companies have done it very successfully. So if you look around, whether it's DocuSign or even Netflix for that matter, like no one kind of sold you the Netflix, membership. It was something which you kind of tried and then you kind of decided to keep it or not. So I think promotional strategy would depend on whether the team or the company is kind of looking at more like product-led growth or thinking more in terms of traditional model, which is like sales and marketing. By and large, most of the companies kind of end up with a hybrid model, which would have like a good component of product-led growth plus sales and marketing. And I'm talking about more like B2B SaaS and tech companies, and it could be different in different industries. So I would say that like promotional strategy would be kind of a more like a hybrid model, which would have like a good mix of product-led growth plus sales and marketing tactics, and traditional sales marketing tactics would include the ones I kind of already talked about: content marketing, social media campaign, email marketing, influencer partnership, and so on and so forth. But I would say that it would be like a more of a hybrid approach.
Yeah, I see. And then once you launch the product, it's out there, people using it. How do you measure success of the product?
Yeah. So as I said, that one thing that everyone involved in the product launch planning and GTM planning needs to be super clear of what is the definition of success and what we mean by success, what metrics we'd be looking at, what are some of the qualitative metrics, what are some of the quantitative metrics, because there are no universal metrics for product launch success or failure. I mean, there could be some, for instance, if the product doesn't work, that would not be considered a successful product launch. But outside of that, I think it needs to be more nuanced. So for instance, if you talk about any product, every product has North Star metrics, and it would depend on the team, what their business objectives are, what their business goals are. But if you talk about like typically, what are some of the metrics that that could kind of help you assess whether the product launch is successful or not. I think for digital products, we could talk about user engagement metrics, customer acquisition cost, customer lifetime value. These could be some of the KPIs that you can look at. But having said that, I would still say that these are not the only metrics that each product can be assessed against. Because if let's say if the focus is on increasing the number of downloads for an app, then I think the metric would be how many people actually download it. But if the objective is the active user on that app in 7 days or 30 days, then the metric would change. It will not be the number of people who download the app, but number of people who actually log in and use the app. So I would say that the success of product launch and the metrics would be defined by the team. And for every team, there should be some North Star metrics and some leading indicators and some lagging indicators. I would say that outside of these like core quantitative metrics, some of the other things we could look at, which are more qualitative in nature, are more like sentiment analysis, like how customers are feeling about these launches. You could do it through social media engagement, or you could also conduct user research just to kind of get an idea how customers are responding to it. I think the other things you could look at is how many escalations are coming. I think that's another good one. Like if the product launch is successful, you should be having less escalation, not more. So I think the number of escalation could be another, good metrics. And I think for B2B, we could also look at sales cycle length, whether it's more than typical sales cycle length or whether it's shorter. What is the win rate? Like if you had 100 leads, how many of those kind of converted? So again, as I said, that there is no one size fits all answer, but every team that's launching product needs to have a very clear objective. What is that we are working towards? And then aligned to that objective, there should be clear North Star metrics and then some leading and lagging indicator, which could be a mix of qualitative and quantitative both.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Targeting towards the North Star, the single thing, and then having a bunch of supporting metrics, that would make sense.
Yeah.
So from your experience, what do you see some of the common mistakes that sometimes product marketers do or product managers do when they launch in a product?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think by and large, one of the most common mistakes is to get more focused on internal stakeholders and you know and not spend or not have deep understanding of external stakeholders, and primarily I'm talking about users and customers here. And unless you have very good understanding who you're building this product for, who you're solving this problem for, it would inadvertently lead to uh, inconsistent messaging, positioning, and leading to eventually not so successful products. So I think one of the common mistakes or areas where folks can improve more is spending more time with customers. Whenever you have had the opportunity to speak or listen to the customers directly, grab it, because as a customer development partner or someone who's working on GTM, it's extremely important that you have had the opportunities to listen or hear from customers directly. So if you have those opportunities, you should grab them and try to get as close to customer as possible. So I would say I think that's one common areas where all of us can improve and try to gather as much insights as possible, because I feel that's kind of make or break, and that also kind of help you get the product market fit right.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Customer is in the center of everything that we're doing, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so I ask everybody about this because this is a hot topic this time, and everybody's opinions, I really value them and collect. How do you think AI, specifically generative AI, will impact the product development world? And maybe
Yeah.
even like developing go-to-market strategies and everything around that.
Yeah, that's a good question and very relevant in today's time. So, personally, I feel that generative AI is going to empower both product marketers and product managers. There's a lot of opportunity to kind of leverage these tools to develop better products and to um, get accelerated GTM strategy. Overall, I think if you're talking about product development, where AI can play a big role, in my opinion, it would be like developing prototype quickly, creating designs, because you would be able to kind of leverage this AI to kind of create more personalized content. Rapid testing is another one I feel, and then lastly, innovative solution, because it's just that you would have like so much information on your fingertips that you could just innovate much more faster. I think those are more around accelerating product development. In terms of GTM strategy, I feel that just like all these generative AI content tools are going to be super empowering, and that could lead to more personalized marketing content. It could also enhance customer interaction. I mean, because you could create chatbots and so many other product features that could increase the customer interaction. And then market research and insights would be faster, because you could just digest information so much more quickly than before. And lastly, I would also think that it will play a role for optimizing sales and distribution as well. So overall, I feel very positive how Gen AI is going to impact product development and GDM, and overall, I think that is going to empower both product marketers and product managers. The winners would be who would be able to harness, these tools well and leverage for their advantages.
Yeah, yeah. I like your positive attitude towards that. Oh, that's great. All right. So we're almost at the end here. And finally, I'd like to ask you if you have any advice to product managers, product marketers, anything maybe we haven't covered, or anything you would like to tell them.
Yeah, so I think this is my advice for both product marketers and product managers. Both of them are glue roles, and they both require a lot of collaboration. So unless you are a good or excellent collaborator, it'll be hard for you to kind of succeed either as a product manager or as a product marketer. So I think first of all, I would say that be excellent collaborator with internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders. Beyond that, I think uh, for both roles, it's very, very important that you start with customer. I think customer-centric solutions, customer-centric thinking is what will make you an excellent, product marketer, product manager versus not. So I think always starting with customer first can be the key to success because whatever you're doing at the end of the day, it needs to resonate with your customers and users. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. So I think that's another one. Third is of course, there's a lot of talk about leveraging data and all of that. I think all of that is good, but don't lose your intuition in the process. Keep some intuition alive and leverage data, but at the same time, don't lose your intuition completely and try to find some balance. I mean, the other thing I would say, communication. I think communication is the key to be successful in these roles because these are highly collaborative role, and to collaborate you'll have to communicate. So communicating regularly, communicating at scale, just ensuring that everyone is on the same page. I think that's part and parcel of the job. So you have to ensure that you are bringing kind of the entire group along. So communication is the key. And then I'll also talk about, and I think that was something we kind of started this interview with, prioritization. So this is a role where a lot of things are being thrown at you all the time, and it could get overwhelming if you do not have some mental models, some rule of thumbs to kind of prioritize. So you need to be really good at prioritization. So prioritize ruthlessly because everyone has limited time at hand. There are only 24 hours in a day, so you can't do everything. So having mental model approaches to kind of understand what you would prioritize versus not, and being able to communicate that to your stakeholder is a big key as well. Other thing I would say, stay nimble. Things change. Things are changing fast in the role, in the industry. So have that growth mindset. Be open to be challenged. Be open to change your mind. Nothing is so. I think it's being open and staying agile is another one. And then I would say the last one is focus on outcome, not output. I think that's, I've been reading this book called Build Trap. That's one of the key takeaways, and it's an important one to remember. So focus should be on outcome, not about how many features or products you have shipped. Focus should be more on whatever you're kind of building and whatever the outcome is. That's net positive for users, customers, and overall. I think that would be my parting note.
Yeah, no, that's great. A lot of great advice. And a lot of great information from you. Thank you very much. I hope people can learn a lot from this. And maybe we can talk in the future again.
Yeah, thanks so much, Faith. I really enjoyed talking to you. I hope I was able to share some insights, and looking forward to speaking with you again. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. Talk to you later. Bye bye.